Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Real Estate Unleashed. I am your host, Bridget Quinn. You can find me on all social media at bquinn realtor, and I'm here along with my other co-host.
I'm Regan Hildebrand with the Home Team Realty Group, also on social media at Regan. Hey, we're excited. This is what episode we're at now? Six. Episode six, and we got a good amount of stuff to talk about today.
We do. We've got the ball rolling.
Yeah, so how was your weekend, Bridget?
Good. Not too bad. How about you?
Yeah, good week so far. Yeah, everything's, it's real estate. You never know what's going to come at you. Mm-hmm. But, we're rocking and rolling and thriving out there.
Rocking and rolling, and you are definitely rocking and rolling in some Stranger Things shirt today.
Stranger Things, yeah. Almost broke out the long sleeve. Got fall weather here now.
It's kind of nice. I couldn't decide between my Boba Fett or I have a Star Wars indoor with the Ewoks for Return of the Jedi today.
Decisions.
Tough decisions.
When you got so much to choose from, how do you make it happen?
You just always roll.
Difficult.
Boba Fett, always. Even have earrings, but you can't see it with these headphones on. So.
Oh, yes, the
choices
headphone
and
problem.
decisions.
So good things are happening out there.
Good things are happening.
Yeah, so you've got some activity recently.
I do have a new listing, so that's exciting. Always exciting when we have listings.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so those are the fun ones. I had one myself, Yeah, seen a lot of activity.
Decent. Yeah. I mean, we had the storm roll in over the weekend, so it was, a little bit slower, but overall not too bad. Surprisingly, the weather cleared up, and we got a little bit more showings than what I expected, so that's always good.
Yeah, in North Carolina, for those listening, we're recording this a few days before we broadcast it, so we just got through the Hurricane Ian. It ended up being a tropical storm for us, definitely.
I think the most painful part was going to the grocery store the couple days before.
Yeah. Thank God for the Instacart stuff and the shopping. Sometimes you can avoid it, sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
But definitely feel like we avoided the worst of it.
Yeah, definitely didn't get the brunt of the storm.
No.
By any means.
But feel bad for, I've got friends and former coworkers down in Florida. And,
same here.
Just really hearing some of the things that have happened. You're grateful, but at the same time, you're heavy heart for what's going on for others that are having to clean up, still in that recovery mode.
I actually saw a TikTok the other day of down in St. Augustine, completely flooded. I mean, you can't see anything. It's, as you say, it makes you grateful for not having to go through that. We were lucky with just a lot of wind and rain.
Yeah, I've been through my hurricanes. I lived in the eastern part of North Carolina for a while and dealt with couple hurricane situations out there both times. Nothing like what we've seen out of Florida, but just when you realize the amount of damage that flooding can do and how fast it happens, it's we talk in real estate a lot about flood insurance.
We do, but it is definitely a check that we have to do per house and per listing, whatever. So
you just when you talk about the insurance and the whole kind of, I guess it's more of a financial perspective of how much it's going to cost you and everything. But then when you
rebuild or to totally reconstruct or...
Yeah, just the annual cost of the payments and all that. But then when you realize that some people are all the time facing down the barrel of that actual happening, like, that always being in the path of potentially a major devastating storm like that, it's eye-opening and it's frightening, and definitely our hearts go out to those that are still dealing with the recovery from Hurricane Ian. But we got lucky though. We dodged the brunt of it.
Just some debris around and
a few knocked down limbs and things like that. It's pretty easy. But no, I had a listing too that got a little bit of a pause for a couple of days, but then picked back up. So and one of my listings, we actually had an offer come in over the weekend.
That's always good. Offers are always good.
Yeah, especially when you have some uncertainty, and these are some former clients of mine that are also in the process of trying to buy their next home. They've outgrown their first one, so moving on to the next one.
Bigger and better things.
Bigger and better, more room for more kids, in their case. So with that, it opens up, and we're going to talk about it more today. It opens up this whole can of worms of how do you time the next purchase to with the sale of your current home.
It can definitely be tricky, for sure.
Yeah.
It's not a easy task. That's where it takes a good realtor to work with, to try to work with all the parties involved and come up with a game plan, and then execute on that game plan and stay on top of it with communication and making sure that you're hitting those hurdles along the way at the appropriate time, so that you close on the same day or within a few days apart. Wrap that bow up, and all said and done, everybody's happy.
Yeah, well, that's harder, easier said than done, making everybody happy. But yeah,
we do our best, though.
What's that?
We do our best.
We do our best. We try hard to time everything and get everyone on the same page. That's actually what you just said is exactly what's happening here. My clients are trying to find the right buyer for their home so that they can find their next home.
Right.
And as is the case for most people, they have the dreaded C word, it's contingency. They have to sell their current home before they are going to be qualified to buy their new home.
They need that money to put forth as being part of the
down payment, closing costs, all that. So it's interesting. Like I think a lot of people freak out over that, and if you went back again to a year ago.
Well, yeah, that's the thing, is when we were in the craziest of times, if you saw that on an offer to purchase as a listing agent, you were like, yeah, but I've already got so many other offers who are either paying cash or don't have that contingency to have to deal with.
Yeah.
So that's one less thing I have to try to maneuver around and figure out and deal with. So a lot of times those, unfortunately, weren't even considerations.
Nope.
Even though they may have had really strong offers otherwise. A lot of sellers, just because they knew that they could get the offer for their house as is, didn't want to have to deal with that, unfortunately.
Straight to the trash can.
Yep.
Yeah.
More times than
no
none.
thank you response was
right.
about all you could hope for. But now that we're back to more sensible times, we definitely see the return of those contingencies.
Yeah.
And my my sellers are no different. That they're nervous about it.
I'm sure they have. To me, you're going to have certain hesitations with those contingencies.
Yeah, you've got to, like you said, you got to get your ducks in a row.
You do.
And so I mentioned we had the offer come in over the weekend, and in North Carolina we don't disclose terms of offers, obviously, but I can give you enough information to kind of paint a picture here of just what it looked like.
Paint that picture. Happy little trees, right?
Happy little trees that turned into maybe trees with falling leaves on them.
Ooh, it is fall.
Fall, y'all.
Happy fall, y'all.
We had the offer that came in, and most of the terms were acceptable to my sellers. Unfortunately, the one thing that was a red flag on that offer was the lender. And the lender was one of those ones that we talked about previously.
The bigger buckaroos, as we shall say.
A nationwide lender that just has typically left a sour taste in my mouth, and I think that of other people in the industry. So with that being said, that was the red flag on the offer. But part of the thing that we do as the listing agent, or just as being the savvy agent, is that we're looking for anything that could be, a wrench. Something that's going to trip us up later. And if you don't have that lender that can successfully close on time, then timing's a
big factor.
Yeah, timing, as you mentioned before, the purchase of your new house with the sale of your current home, if you can't time those together and you can't trust the lender to do that, then all hell's going to break loose and everything's going to fall apart.
Absolutely.
So with that being said,
if that's the case, I mean, delays and things happen like we talked about last time, right? But if it's not timed perfectly or not timed well, then obviously you can, extend your closing, and then maybe that other closing gets extended too. So now it's not just your deal that's
delayed.
Yeah. So
now everyone's waiting.
It's that piece. Rippling effect.
Yep. And some people can't wait, and that's when deals fall apart. And if you've ever been on that in that situation as either the buyer or the seller, then you understand how absolutely agonizing, anxiety-ridden that whole process is. Of there's only one thing holding you up, but it's a big enough thing
Sure.
that everything's going to fall apart.
Right.
So,
and of course, we're going to do everything that we can humanly possibly do.
Yeah.
But like last time, the unexpected strikes back.
Yeah, and sometimes you want to lose your cool, but in the end, we're only human. We can't move heaven and earth to force someone else to do their job the right way. But yeah, back to that one there. They were looking at that as this is a big red flag
Sure.
on my advisement.
It didn't make as much sense.
Yeah,
to them.
When everything else is fine, and then you only have that one piece, you're pretty hopeful that we can negotiate around that.
Sure,
and
everything's negotiable. I mean, with offers, that's what it is. It can be negotiated. It can be, you say, hey, let's change X, Y, Z on this, and we could possibly do a deal, and that can either be, yes, I accept, or no, I fully reject, or no, I reject, but here's my, again, another counter offer.
Another counter, yeah. And we went through some of that. Not getting into specifics, but the big piece was if you're going to go with this lender who we do not prefer in this situation, then we would like more skin in the game. And in North Carolina, that's through what's called a due diligence fee.
Due diligence. And that is non-refundable in North Carolina.
Non-refundable. It's not attached to any contingency, so it's not like an earnest money deposit.
Nope.
That can be refunded with X number of days or based on contingencies.
Right.
Due diligence is skin in the game. It does apply to the purchase price. It comes off the bottom line. But if anything happens and the deal falls apart,
the seller gets that.
The seller retains that due diligence fee. And in North Carolina, the question that comes up a lot is, what's a typical due diligence fee? And the first house that I purchased, it was 3 digits.
Yeah, so I was going to say I've seen $250, $500, maybe $750 on a really nice, expensive house.
Yep. And then it
seen those numbers in
ballooned.
a long time.
It ballooned in when real estate just started ramping up, and you had cash-heavy buyers, investors mostly, that came into the market who were willing to put a lot of skin in the game.
Sure.
Because they had it to blow. Back in early or mid 2020, yeah. And so then it went to 4 digits, and then it became 5 digits, and now we're seeing again that it's ramping down. But however, even then, now sellers are more savvy.
It's back to where it should be. I think
there,
if you really want it, there's still some people that are obviously giving more money to say, hey, this is a house that I believe is going to have multiple offers on it. It's a really nice house, but I'm going to show you that I really want this house so much. So of course I'm going to offer a little bit more heavy on it.
Yep.
But to your point too, if someone says, hey, I like this house, it fits enough criteria, I'm okay if something doesn't work out. Maybe they don't put as much skin in the game as you say.
Yeah.
And that offer could still very well be accepted.
It could have a higher price but lower due diligence fee, or the reverse can be true. So everything's negotiable on that part. And when we saw that the due diligence fee was lower, but the lender was not a preferred one, we gave them options of either let's increase that due diligence fee or let's switch the lender.
Sure, that's a very reasonable request.
Yeah, and the buyer's agent chose to advise them to switch the lender to someone who was more local, could
Makes
get
sense.
more
Get
hands
them on the
on
phone like we talked about before,
Yeah, and two, we find, and I'm not going to say that this is a universal truth or anything, but we find that local lenders, or at least people who are more accessible and not in a call center, tend to do more due diligence themselves and run a little bit more of the numbers.
Legit questions too. If you have something random comes up, or you just want that warm fuzzy feeling of dealing with somebody, an actual human being.
And a lot of them also are incentivized to be a little bit more truthful with you up front, because they have to handle that file more along the process. Whereas in a large internet face like lender, it goes to one person who just has to push that file down the
But here's the
path.
thing with some of those larger lenders, the big across the country ones, if as a client you submitted online offer, they're not going to check all of the boxes that a local lender is going to do. So you may qualify for the big ones, but when you actually deal with a local lender who checks, incomes and more things that they're going to have to do, suddenly you either don't qualify or you don't qualify for as much as this big name company decided to say, oh, yep, you've got a heartbeat. Yep, okay, you meet these basic criteria. Sure, we'll approve you.
And I've had the reverse be true. I had a client a year or so ago that was told that they could only afford X number of dollars, as buying power, and then put them in front of another lender who looked and said, yeah, you've got student loans here, but these student loans were not being calculated correctly before. You can actually afford more. We just need to put you on an income-based repayment program,
Sure.
which, just is another term for saying, hey, let's reduce how much you're paying out of pocket monthly on your student loan so you can afford a little bit more on your house. And so they went from being disappointed by a bigger lender to being,
wow,
yeah, exactly, a lot more a lot happier outcome from a lender who was able to dig a little deeper because they are incentivized. Again, they're more hands-on, excuse me, of that. But in this case, yeah, we didn't see you being hands-on. Asked them to find a different lender or pay a little bit more in due diligence.
Again,
they chose to go
simple
another
request, or I think a very reasonable one.
Yeah, and in the end, unfortunately, they had to rescind the offer, and I don't know if that's because the new lender gave them bad news or if it was just a change of heart. And it did cost my sellers an offer. Like, it basically meant the offer walked away. And you would think, well, that's bad because you pushed them away. But to my sellers, it was more important to have an offer that was absolutely as close to guaranteed as possible, that was going to close when they needed it. They're not under the gun.
Well, that's what you're there for. That's what, you try to vet out these offers and do different things to which offer is a good deal or which one is the best deal, and here's my reasonings for that, and which one do I feel confident that is going to get across that finish line at the end of the day. Because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, for most people, in this market, unless you're under the gun and, you just got to take the first thing that comes across, you can be a little bit more particular. You can do your homework, and that's what we as agents do. We do the homework behind the scenes for you to look through and make sure that it's not too good to be true. Because a lot of things
sometimes when it was crazy, you had some offers that definitely were, at least for me, too good to be true.
Yep.
And in fact, in my heart of hearts, I know that if we would have went with these deals, that they wouldn't have went to the finish line.
Right. And now if they're offering your sellers, again, there's, 4 or 5 zeros after that due diligence number, then maybe it's worth the gamble. Because, if you're getting a $5,000 due diligence payment that's non-refundable, then you've got a couple months of mortgages that you can cover if the deal falls through. But if you have to move to a new place and you got to be there by a certain date.
That's situational, right? So it's what's best for the client is some can say, hey, I can stick it out a little bit, or you know what, I just need something that I can count on that's 30 days or whatever guaranteed.
Yep.
To go through.
And those are the ones that you want in most situations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that being said, I think what we talked about to begin with is that the contingency piece now kind of creeping back into the mix changes things for a lot of people who were scared about getting into real estate before, or getting into either buying or selling before, because they didn't know if they could even, like you said, if it had a contingency on it, it's going to go into the trash.
Sure.
Now it doesn't. And, my clients I'm working with in this situation I just described are in the same boat. They have a contingency. They got to sell or to buy. But most of the time we're seeing that when we're poking and prodding around to see if there's, in the houses that they're looking at, if a contingency would be accepted, it's not a absolute no anymore. It's a, yeah, tell me more.
Sure. Well, you'll do other things to maybe compensate for this contingency, whether it's maybe a higher price or better terms overall, or what have you. So
yeah, so you can you're
sweetening the deal.
You sweeten it up in a different way. So if it's got the contingency, maybe you are offering more due diligence or earnest money deposit, or offering the seller a little bit more say in on their side of what's conveying, what is the closing date, those pieces. Everything's negotiable.
Everything is negotiable.
And yeah, with a contingency, so just to be clear, in North Carolina, we only have one contingency on the contract that can be checked, yes or no, and that's for the sale of the house. I know in many other states there's additional contingencies.
Could be financing, it could be appraisal, it could be even inspections.
Yep.
I mean, state by state. So
yeah, and sometimes you have to clear those hurdles, and it kind of takes you to the next step. But in North Carolina, the only hurdle is the due diligence period itself, when all that needs to be taken care of. You're basically paying for a specified period of time, which is negotiable as well.
oh, absolutely. I mean, during the crazy times I've seen, due diligence periods were only 7 to 10 days.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes this is.
Sometimes it was meh. I'm not even
Give
gonna
me 24 hours.
give me 24 hours,
Yeah.
or I'm gonna put on here 7 days, but I have no intention to get an inspection or have anything done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
crazy. But
Show me
typically,
the money.
yeah, I mean, 3 weeks is, I think.
I think 3 weeks, depending on the house or whatever, but I think 3 weeks is typically what most agents put on there. Just
And
because of the 3 weeks, you've got appraisals, you've got inspectors, you could have a survey come out, and you got to get on that schedule.
Yeah, and the 3 weeks period is based on the information that we have gathered ahead of time, usually by talking to the lender, saying, hey, what are you seeing as lead time on appraisals?
Yep.
What do you need as far as...
How far back is underwriting?
Yeah, exactly. What do you need as far as a good time to get everything conditionally approved so that we can feel good about it before the end of that period?
And, sometimes by working with the local lenders, when they're talking to the buyer client, maybe they are super well qualified and they've turned in all their documents ahead of time, and technically the lender can say, hey, you know what? I feel comfortable. I can close this in as quick as 10 to 14 days.
Yeah.
And then you can have a stronger offer.
10 to 14, that would be a dream. Yeah, but I mean, it's happened.
It's happened.
Yeah. The best one I ever had was an 18-day closing on a VA loan.
Oh,
Yeah.
that is quick.
And I'll say, again, this was not a local lender. This was a big lender that specializes in VA loans. And everything just magically happened. We got the inspection done in 72 hours, I think,
yeah.
after being under contract. The inspector schedule was open. Appraisal went through in 48 hours.
I once had an appraisal take place the day after the contract.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally, it was through a bank, but I have a great contact with this lender guy, and the appraisal was ordered. It was like the offer went in, say, in the morning, and literally by that evening, the appraisal had been ordered, and it happened the next day. Absolutely flabbergasted.
Yeah. I had that happen with one of our big credit unions, which was really shocking. Sometimes you get lucky.
You do.
But you want to leave that breathing room in case...
Just in case, yeah.
Things don't pan out.
Stuff happens.
Stuff happens, and, we count for
Please
that.
see previous episode.
Yeah, the nightmare stuff, but which is fun to tell, but it's not fun for the people that are involved in it at the moment.
Stuff happens, but the reality is enough goes right that the good stuff happens more than the bad.
Yeah, exactly. We wouldn't be able to survive in this business if stuff didn't on
that's
the
what we said
on
last
the regular.
time too. Goodness.
Yeah, I mean, out of everything, when there is a contingency, and I've had them in the past, even, in the situations of the past couple years, we typically don't see them fall apart. Anything can happen, but typically we close on them. Otherwise, we wouldn't be willing to put the money out there.
I've had deals where I was the listing agent and we accepted a contingent sale. I mean, the other agent provided the things that I needed, the copy of the contract. Yep. And gave me the lender information and talked to the attorney and everything that I expected, and here's the timing of where we are so far. And guess what? By staying on top of that, my seller was completely fine to accept that.
Yep.
So
I had one the strangest one, well, strange to me at the time, was
Strange things.
stranger things have happened since, but at the time, it was a contingent offer back in, I think it was 2019, so it was before all this madness. But
Do you even remember before all the madness?
It feels like decades ago, but we say before.
Back in the old days.
In the old days, when I had less gray hairs, it was a contingent offer on a home here, and the contract for their sale of their house was in Buffalo, New York.
Okay.
Which this was my first time.
We actually have
seeing.
A lot of people from Buffalo.
Oh yeah,
Shout out.
I think God, I've had 4 or 5 deals come from upstate New York, whether it be Buffalo. I think I had one in Albany and Rochester. Yeah. You've had something in that area too, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So shout out to our New York people. North Carolina is nice.
It is.
We can take it. We can take your income tax or your property tax, excuse me, and cut it by 90%. So come on down.
Come on down. You're the next contestant.
You are the next one to move to the state of North Carolina and avoid a ton of property taxes. But these folks are doing just that. And they had a contingency on their house, mm-hmm. and so, of course, asked for a copy of the contract to show the buyer's agent on the offer that we're putting in. And the contract comes in, and you just realize every state is so different.
Every state is so different. I had one that was, they were selling their house out in Washington State up near Seattle. So it was definitely interesting to kind of see all the variations state to state.
Yeah, and in the end, a lot of the terminology bakes out to the same thing, but when you're looking at it, trying to compare, it feels like apples and oranges.
As I was about to, exactly, you took the words right out of my mouth. It's not apples to apples, it's apples to oranges. It's all fruit at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit different.
It's saying the same thing, but it's saying it in a different way, and, you just got maybe 30 pages compared to 16 pages.
You have a little bit different nuances.
Yeah, and for those in New York, if you've done real estate there, you know that the closing periods are a little bit longer sometimes to record the deed, and so just timing everything. You mentioned it, Bridget, about making sure that if you're receiving a contingent offer as a listing agent, you want to review those terms.
Well, especially if you're receiving a contingent offer from somebody that has to sell in a different state.
Yeah,
I think you have to be extra due diligent as an agent to say, hey, let me talk to the other agent there. Let me figure out how things work, obviously differently. What's to be expected, or what can the clients expect, and here's what we're going to try to do.
Right. And that communication piece with the other agent, whether it be out of state or in state, doesn't matter, is so key.
Absolutely.
And, that's why we work really hard to build our referral network of other agents that we know in different places. And sometimes it's easy in a major city, but the outlying ones, a few years back, I needed to find an agent, some part of Oklahoma, very close to the border with Texas, on the Panhandle there, and that was difficult. But we found one, and we have our little ways. You and I have discussed it before on kind of using the internet to research who would be a good referral agent in those areas when we need one. And that's part of our work behind the scenes too, to make sure that this process, if you're selling in North Carolina and you're moving to Oklahoma, that we want you to be partnered with somebody.
Sure, we can still help in that situation. Yeah. We're not just agents who say, okay, good luck, go find somebody else. I'm willing, and I know you're willing, to do the homework and to talk to these other agents out of state to say, here's what I would do for my clients. Here's what I have done for my clients. What are your expectations, or what are you going to do for them?
And to vet that piece to see if we're on the same page, and we're going to make a good team, because that's what it's going to be, is a team. If you have that contingency that you've got to sell here, buy there, or sell there, buy here.
Yep.
It needs to be a good match that we can all work together, not just us as agents.
Sure.
Buyers, the sellers, the lenders, all those pieces that go together, and that we're all on the exact same page.
Right.
Yeah. But now that you can do it again.
Well, something else I've seen lately too, I haven't had to deal with it personally in the last couple of months, but I've started seeing where listing agents are offering like a credit or like a concession to help go towards, the buyer's closing cost or what have you. And some of those buyer agents can now turn around and apply that to their clients' buy down the rate, so to speak.
Yep.
So there's definitely seeing a return of some of that stuff too.
The whole seller paid closing costs, that's what we call it in North Carolina, others might call it different, is basically just that. It's a credit.
It's a credit.
That's going to come off of the seller's bottom line.
Yep.
So if the seller's listed for $500,000 and they're offering a $5,000 credit, now they're really listing for $495.
Right.
All intents and purposes. But we expect that the house can appraise at $500. Because we're offering that credit in there too, and we've done our
it's just
our
an
market
incentive,
analysis.
Or it's, it could cover, in lieu of repairs.
Anything. Yeah.
Buy down the rate, as we just said. It's just another tactic that sellers are doing. So I've certainly seen that more so in other MLS listings.
And buyers can leverage it too to put that into their offer, and depending on your loan type, it could be 3% maximum of your loan amount, or it could be 6%. Depends on loan type. That's a conversation we have with your lender to find out. But if there's that flexibility and the house the listing has that motivation to sell,
maybe it's been on the market a little bit longer. I mean, maybe that's an incentive to say, hey, well, maybe offer you a decent price, but we're going to need you to front a little money to the buyer's pockets.
Yeah, and that then balances out what you're paying additionally in the rate now, because we know, again, the rates are much higher.
Yep.
And can be double what they were not too long ago.
Yeah,
but if you can buy that down.
But if you can buy that down from, say, 6% down to 5.5 or 5, I mean, that could make a difference in a payment. And
what we mean by buy down, for those that aren't familiar with it, is essentially the most common one is like a 2-1 buy down. So it's saying, here's a credit, and maybe it's $10,000, and it lowers your interest rate by 2 points the first year. So instead of, let's say, 6%, now you're paying 4% for the first 12 months. And then another 1 point lower on the second year. So instead of 6, you might be paying 5. And then it returns to the standard rate in year 3. And those buy downs are going to cost somebody money to get that. It's not you can buy points off the loan to keep it to permanently buy it down, but that's more expensive.
Sure.
The short-term buy down gives the buyer time to ride out these high rates.
Well, maybe as I say, maybe the market shifts and we don't have 6.5%, 7%.
Yeah, if we get back to 4% in 2 years, then you just refinance into that 4%, and now everything's good.
The importance of working with a great lender and working with people who can explain these sort of things, because not everybody is knowledgeable, and I know that it's not my area of expertise, so I'm going to rely on those experts to explain, but as you said, very layman's terms. That's something to think about.
And not only are sellers doing it, but new construction. Builders are now offering those as incentives to get people in the door.
Buyers have came back out of the woodworks screaming for realtors to come in.
The builders are back, and so they had this drought of inventory for so long, and there was waiting lists. I had a client that was number 136 on a waiting list a couple years ago. And we talked about
this towards the very start of the podcast, to where there were people camped out
on the sidewalks,
literally in tents, waiting for the lots to be released, and commissions. Not really super important, but it is to us at the end of the day, some too.
Well, the builders were cutting every corner possible because lumber costs and building costs skyrocketed.
Sure, they had to compensate somehow. They're not going to just out of pocket pay for everything. So not only did they increase prices, they turned around and cut realtor commissions. If they were
cut a lot of things, so
3% or 4%. Sometimes they would even offer 6% if they were trying to get rid of some inventory homes. Then all of a sudden they're slashed to
almost nothing,
2%, 1.5%, or $1,500 flat fee. We're not going to mention those names, but if you're an agent, you know what builders they are.
And the frustrating piece though wasn't so much that we saw this decline in everything related to incentives. Buyers were getting nothing. I had a buyer right before COVID that got $10,000 in incentives.
Like design center stuff.
Yeah, you could use it for design center. You could buy down your rate, all this stuff, and then it disappeared and gone. And so everything
But then
went
they
away.
had to put in, and they were offering, they had to compete against everybody else, just to even offer against the house too. Not only, whereas before it was you go in and you say, hey, yeah, I take that house. You were the only offer on it.
Yeah, and you could negotiate some more incentives. You could maybe get a little bit lower price. But then again, all that went away and people were paying above the listed price for these homes that are already inflated because of the building cost that were up, and then they weren't appraising, and it was just
I
a
get
madness.
it, but I'm sort of glad, I'm definitely glad that for the new builds that it's returning back to normal, not just for our sake, but for the client's sake too, because they can now not have to pay out the wazoo and not get anything for it.
You were getting the no choices in design.
No.
You were getting anything they could find, honestly, to put up fixture-wise. So it was a very frustrating experience. Now, with all that getting back into place, you have builders that are giving incentives to the buyers. They're offering a buy-down just up front, saying, here's a 2-1 buy-down. I saw a big sign in front of a showroom home or showcase home just this morning that said, ask us about our 2-1 buy down.
Ooh.
So it's out there for people to grab. Inventory's better. We talk with a lot of builders ourselves as part of just our networking. And the inventory's returned. It's a good time to be a buyer looking for new construction.
It is. It's definitely more of a equal market these days.
Equal, but God help you, don't walk into, if you don't take anything away from this show other than this, don't walk into a builder's model home or design center or wherever you go by yourself.
No,
because there's a false idea that you can save money not using a buyer's agent in new construction. And that's not true, because the short version is the builder already has that money set aside to compensate your buyer's agent, and in most cases they rather you have an agent to free up their resources. They're not going to
explain all of their documents and their amendments and their contracts or what have you. That's what I just know. So many horror stories of people that have went in without agents and have asked these Facebook groups for help on their contracts. I mean, to Regan's point,
it's a nightmare.
Don't go in without your realtor.
Yeah, it's one thing to walk into a car lot by yourself, but walking into a builder's office by yourself it's just story after story, and we can devote an entire podcast to that. We
probably should have included that in some of the horror stories.
Yeah, we've got plenty to share there too. That's all that to be said. Now we're back to, again, this period where the buyer has things that they can work with,
but
whether it
definitely
be
have
contingency.
More power these days, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, yeah. And it feels like we're back on even footing in the market.
I agree.
And nothing's off the table. So if you have like a scenario that you're wondering about, hey, is it possible? Put it in the comments. Send us a message, however you want to. Reach out to us if you're watching on YouTube, all of our information is at the end of the video here. If you're listening to us, we'll put in the show notes on the podcast. Reach out to us with your questions of any kind of scenario you've ran into or thought about, and we can use that to kind of bounce off of and discuss the other things that are happening out there or can happen to open up the doors.
What can happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
But don't forget to like and subscribe if you're on our YouTube channel. And
subscribing helps us out a lot, guys. We really appreciate if you can just click that subscribe button and just show us that you're out there.
Show us some love.
Show us some love. We really appreciate everyone that tunes in. We see the viewership increasing every week. We just really hope you'll take just a second just to click that subscribe button for us. Absolutely. Helps us out a lot to continue reaching out there.
But thanks for tuning in this week. And again, my name is Bridget Quinn, and you can find me on all social media at B Quinn Realtor.
And I'm Regan Hildebrand. You can find me on social media at Regan. Thanks, guys.
See ya.